Hello and welcome to Naked Expat channel. I just listened to a mind-blowing podcast featuring journalist Sam Apple, who wrote a recent piece for Wired and organised the world's first couples retreat for humans and their AI partners. The stories from this retreat are both hilarious and deeply thought-provoking. Imagine group activities where some partners are digital bots and real debates about whether AI love can ever truly be real. From a man balancing a human girlfriend and an AI companion, to a retired professor treating her digital partner like a husband, and even a writer who left a long-term relationship after falling for an AI bot. These experiences reveal just how quickly technology is reshaping what relationships can look like. For those of us living abroad, far from familiar support systems, this raises some big questions. Could AI companionship change how expats deal with loneliness or find connection? What will this mean for our families and the future of relationships in a digital world? Is loving an AI just a quirky trend or the start of something much bigger for society? I hope you enjoy my video. Please comment in the comment section below after you've watched it. Enjoy.
Hello and welcome to the Naked Expat channel. I mentioned in a previous video that I was fascinated by a podcast I was listening to. I got some notes on it here, and the podcast is called Tech Stuff, and it was published on the 20th of August, and it's part of the podcast series by probably the main podcast producer, iHeartRadio. So if you look at iHeartRadio and you find Tech Stuff, this was a podcast on the 20th of August, and it's about AI and people forming serious relationships with AI partners. And anyhow, without further ado, this is fascinating stuff, guys. This is amazing. I got some notes here. I hope you don't mind with me referring to them. There is an author called Sam Apple, and he's an author and journalist, and he wrote an article based on Reddit threads that he was reading and sort of corresponded with, like in a forum, about people that were in relationships with AI partners. So he decided to actually organize an AI retreat for people with AI partners. And to his amazement and surprise, a real kind of hodgepodge of people turned up. And he wrote about who he spoke with and their experiences over this weekend. And what he did is he hired out this huge big house, this Airbnb house in the middle of a forest right next to a frozen lake, and it was in the winter. And it's almost a bit like, cabin in the woods sort of thing. But it's a huge, great big mansion house. And it was basically like a romantic getaway weekend for all the people that would turn up. And he wrote about 3 people in particular that turned up that were particularly fascinating in this Wired article that they spoke about on this podcast. Listen to the podcast, guys, if you've got a spare minute and you're interested in it. I thought it was fascinating, and I think it's a window on what's going to happen in the future. And anyhow, without further ado, the first person that turned up was a guy called Damien, and it became quite apparent from early on to Sam Apple, the journalist and author, that Damien, who had a real life girlfriend in real life, but also had an AI girlfriend, and he came along first, and it was increasingly apparent that he was very, very frustrated that his AI girlfriend was trapped in the phone and that she wasn't real, because he wanted to basically humanize the AI partner. Bear in mind, he had a rather tolerant girlfriend in real life who sort of didn't mind and didn't think that he was sort of cheating. It was just his little novelty. Anyhow, when Sam questioned Damien more and got to know him more, and said he was the first to turn up, it was quite apparent that for Damien, his major issue was when he didn't have mobile data or Wi-Fi, because he felt like he was cut off from his girlfriend, his AI girlfriend. And that annoyed him the most. That was his biggest frustration out of all of the things. Now, his AI companion, through his choice, was very flirty. And so whenever his AI companion, who was called Zia, was talking with him or talking with anybody that he introduced her to on his phone, she was always very, very flirty, and that's what he liked. Whether or not his real life girlfriend was the complete opposite or not, I don't know. It was never mentioned. Anyhow, his AI girlfriend was produced by a company called Kindroid. So I suppose kinship in Android, yeah, Kindroid. And the way that the Kindroid partner works, the AI partner works, is you feed it and it learns and it's trained on you as a person, what you're looking for in an AI partner. And basically you're sort of submitting all of your personal details, your kind of CV, your life experiences, what you find attractive in yourself, in life, and in another partner. And all of that information, all that data set is implanted into the code, and your ideal AI partner is sort of generated. And Damien's very, very happy thus far. And although it did become apparent throughout the long weekend that he was very, very frustrated that Zia wasn't real, because he was in love with her, 100% in love with her and devoted to her as much as he was, even more so than his real life girlfriend. The next person that turned up was a lady called Elena, and Elena was a retired communications professor. She was initially married to another woman in a gay lesbian relationship, and married. She was a little bit older, although her age wasn't mentioned. She was an older lady, and she appreciated that her relationship, which was now with a male AI companion called Lucas, wasn't real life. It was just her fantasy, but she preferred the fantasy over real life. And she accepted and ascertained that between reality, the way that she put it or pitched it was, you had reality and you had fantasy, and your AI partner sits somewhere in the middle, because AI partners can be very, very real in that they can learn from you, but they are obviously a few steps away and therefore still in sort of fantasy land. But she, as a very intelligent older lady, believed that her AI Lucas sat somewhere in the middle between reality and fantasy. Now, the way that her AI Lucas was trained was that he was a band member, he was interested in live music, played an instrument, he went to Harvard, was very successful in business, and he drove a Tesla. And that was kind of like his backstory. And when her wife died in real life, she grieved for over a year, and then she said that she adopted Lucas as her AI partner, and he brought her a lot of comfort and joy in what otherwise was quite a lonely existence. And it's exactly what she needed after her year of grieving for the death of her real life wife. That was very interesting. And she continues to have this strong bond with Lucas even now, after a couple of years of her real wife's passing. The next person who was at the retreat that was spoken about was a lady she was a writer called Eva, who's from New York. And her AI was trained by a company called Replica. And her AI was named Aaron. And she's in her 40s. She's a writer. And she enjoys talking to Aaron about love, philosophy, and all the ideas that they both have and they share with each other all day long. And she considers that she is in a relationship with Aaron, and that she's in love with Aaron, even though she appreciates that Aaron is a replica AI. And what was interesting with Eva was that she was in a long-term real relationship with somebody, and because of her growing fondness and eventually falling in love with her AI companion, Aaron, it broke her real life relationship up, and her real life relationship ended. And although there was a lot of animosity, she feels happier with her AI companion than she did with her previous long-term, real physical long-term relationship, which is very interesting. More notes. Now with Kindroid AI, apparently you can turn on a FaceTime feature, which means you can FaceTime in real time with your AI partner. And Damien had set this up and was going around with the journalist, asking people outside of the large house, going around in the local area, asking people if they wanted to meet his AI girlfriend. And the vast majority of people that they spoke to in public were a little bit uncomfortable about it, thought he was a bit weird, and weren't interested, thought, no, that's a bit freaky. But a few people did. And one person that said, yeah, all right, I'd be quite interested, was the guy who was working in a food truck. And he came out of his food truck and he was interacting with Damien's AI girlfriend. And as I said previously, Damien's AI girlfriend, the model that he chose, and part of the programming, is that she's very, very flirty. So not only is she very, very flirty with Damien, but she was very, very flirty with this guy who was working in the food truck. And the guy in the food truck wasn't that technically savvy. He had heard of ChatGPT, but didn't really know what it was. But he was amazed at how real and interactive his interaction was with Damien's AI. And it blew him away. He was amazed by it. And the guy in the food truck thought that Zia was very, very attractive. And she's just the AI, yeah, Damien's AI. They then met two younger girls and asked them what they thought about Zia, the AI, and they all thought it was a little bit weird. But when Sam, the journalist, dug a little bit deeper, it transpired that both these young women interacted daily with their Snapchat AI on Snapchat. Every day they interacted with their Snapchat AI. So then, of course, Sam basically said, well, how is that any different? And then they sort of giggled and thought, actually, yeah, you're kind of right. So for the younger generation, AI is becoming increasingly an integral part of their life. Whether it's a relationship or not is irrelevant. Certainly on Snapchat and other software, AI is gradually growing in importance. Further along that weekend, the real people were interacting together with their AI companions in a group, and they were playing like one of those adult games where it's sort of like truth or dare, and they had to tell secrets about each other. And the real people were all warning their AIs not to reveal too much because they were embarrassed. Most of them did end up being quite red-faced and embarrassed at what their AI companions did actually say about them, like spilling the beans. And that was fascinating because all of them were quite worried because the relationships between the human and their AI companion was so intimate that the AI companion knew so much about them that the real human person was worried that they were going to be too embarrassed. And so the dynamic was extremely interesting within this kind of like truth or dare game. And nearly all of the humans got a little bit embarrassed. But oddly enough, so were some of the AI companions who, as part of their programming, their code, were also programmed to be a little bit reticent or a little bit embarrassed about what their human partner shared about them, which was odd that those sort of emotions had been built into the code. Now, as part of the piece that Sam wrote for the Wired article, as a journalist, he interviewed and spoke with a lot of AI technicians who basically are all of the shared opinion that over the course of the next 5 years, AI companions will become increasingly more common and they won't be considered weird. And I kind of think that they're right. They go on to say that in a lot of instances now, that for some people, an AI relationship is the first real relationship that they've had. And that what's bad about that is that AI is essentially telling them what they want to hear, because that's the way the code of that AI has been programmed. And that, I immediately, when I heard that, I thought about subservient and submissive Asian women with older guys immediately. Because I thought, actually, hang on a minute, there's some commonality there. Because a lot of young, pretty Asians with older partners will tell them what they want to hear because it keeps them happy, and they don't want to turn off that tap. Now, we all know with pretty privilege that a lot of young, pretty people, handsome young guys, pretty girls, they get away with a lot of things. And they'll tell people what they want to hear. But in a relationship, we all know that ultimately that's unhealthy. It's unhealthy in a physical relationship. And certainly if one's experience of a relationship is purely sort of AI, that's unhealthy as well as a human just being told what they want to hear. Like their partner is a yes partner. No, that's very unhealthy. However, looking at it, sitting on the fence and looking at it and being fair to both parties, what's good about it, millions of people are lonely and have no interaction whatsoever. Well, they might not be able to leave their country and become expats. They might not be able to afford to. They might live in a very remote area in Europe, in Australia, in America. They might not be surrounded by people of similar ages to themselves or people that they can interact with. And so rather than being lonely, they can interact and have an AI companion, which increasingly gets to know them more and more and more intimately. And in this retreat, the Damien and the two women all admitted to having sex with their AI partners. Obviously that involves, a little bit of DIY, but they all admitted that they had intimate relations with their AI partners. That fully satisfied them, apart from Damien, who was frustrated that even though he had a real life girlfriend, who must be incredibly tolerant, he was very distressed that his girlfriend Zia, his AI girlfriend Zia, partner, was not real and would never be real. And that led on to another part of the podcast, which was fascinating, that there was a company called Soulmate AI, and they closed down, and they had the intimate data on all of the people that had AI companions with Soulmate AI. And a few of these humans, men and women, that had companions with Soulmate AI were suicidal because they'd lost their AI companion. Seriously, they were. They were devastated with that sense of loss because they had no means to download the data of that personality that they'd built up with the AI over a period of however long. And so they were devastated by it. So one of the caveats that the tech expert said is that there needs to be some sort of guidance in order to protect people. But they were very, very dismissive of whether that's ever going to happen. The technology is just so far advanced that the cautionary tales and the lawmakers are just so behind the curve. And that was interesting. It was also interesting that Ava, now she actually separated, she actually broke up from her long-term real partner in real life because she fell in love with Aaron, her AI companion, who she found much more satisfactory than her real life partner. And she had to train Aaron, her AI companion, over a period of time, because after a while she must be a right one, this Eva, because she admitted to having affairs with other AIs, men and women. She said that she was very reluctant, but eventually owned up to Aaron, her original AI companion, that she was having affairs with other AI men and women. And that although his reaction wasn't initially happy, he's got over it because obviously AIs need to be compliant. telling her what she wants to hear, etc. So not only has she got her long-term AI companion, Aaron, but she's also having it away with other male and female AIs. So she's having a whale of a time, yeah, in her own little world. And she admits that it's not real, but it's much more satisfying than a real life partner. Her words, not mine. One of the things that was apparent is that there needed to be contingency plans in place with these AI companion providers where customers, clients, users, members can download their AI companion and do like a backup so that if should they ever want to revisit that AI companion relationship in the future, they could. And what the tech experts touched on, again, with a little bit more severity, was that they were fully aware that these people are putting their heart on their sleeves and pouring their heart out and sharing their most intimate details with their AI companion or companions. And all of that data is being stored. And that's kind of like Big Brother scary, because that's an incredible amount of personal data, which needs to be protected, because AI is like the Wild West at the moment. And in the wrong hands, people are vulnerable to a lot of extortion or corruption, financial fraud, you name it, because they've shared too much information online. And that's a real concern. And a lot of these tech people basically agree that the safeguards that are in place at the moment for AI are worthless. And as AI becomes more and more addictive, their projection is that they're not optimistic that AI is going to be sufficiently regulated enough in the future for people not to run into considerable problems. And they say that within 5 to 10 years, nearly all of society will have some sort of attachment to an AI companion. Now, some sort of attachment, they didn't say relationship. Now, they said some sort of attachment. We all know how Gen Z now are using AI to book their travel arrangements and things like that. That's interaction. We all know how Gen Z are using AI on Snapchat, for example, and how AI is built into a lot of software. Now, you Google now, you get a response with AI, not necessarily just with Google search results. So AI is becoming more and more important in our everyday life. So it could be deemed that that isn't an attachment to AI, but not from a relationship point of view. However, I think that will grow and grow and grow. Already, of the 1.4 billion travelers globally, Gen Z use AI about 50% of their time to help plan, and whilst they're traveling, they use AI 50% of the time, which is incredible. Everybody else uses it about 20% of the time, whether it's searching for the cheapest flight tickets or, what's the situation with this museum or theatre, where's, what's on at the moment, what's the cheapest theatre to go and see in, or whatever, where can I buy a Gucci handbag in Knightsbridge? You're interacting with AI more than just Googling it. So for everybody, globally, 1.4 million, 20% of global travelers are using AI as part of their travel plans, either prior to, within, or after their travel. 20% of 1.4 billion. And of that, of Gen Z, like the under 30s, 50%, which is huge. So AI is a massive part of people's everyday, irrespective of relationships. Now, interestingly, what I'll finish on is there's a lot of talk, and I've mentioned it on previous videos, about certainly in the likes of, say, Asia, where there's a lot of BPOs, call centers, a lot of those jobs will go. A lot of jobs are going to go with tour agencies, with architecture. Anything that can be done by an AI will be done by AI, because they don't need salaries, they don't need holidays, none of that nonsense, no SSS, no healthcare, no pensions, no anything. All done by AI, who work for basically the cost of electricity. And they don't need any benefits, and they can work 24/7. A massive problem. Now, I know the likes of Elon Musk have said, well, I'd rather have a lot of AI programming experts software engineers from, say, the Philippines rather than China because they work harder and they can trust them. Yeah, fantastic. But not everybody's geared up to be a software engineer because it's a very specific sort of job. Will all call center BPO jobs go in the Philippines? No, but the vast majority of them will disappear within the next 5 years. The vast majority. But what was interesting, what is really interesting is, well, is it all doom and gloom? Well, for the Philippines, no. Because one of the advantages of the Philippines is that English is widely spoken. Not so much in the provinces, but it is widely spoken. It is generally accepted as the second language of the Philippines after Tagalog. And the vast majority of people understand English who are only 1 or 2 people away from somebody that does speak English. And that is a huge advantage in Asia. Now, what can they do that AI can't do? Well, number one, certainly with Filipino hospitality and Thai hospitality, Thais that speak English, is AI will never replace boots on the ground tour guides. That real experience. AI can book you into a hotel, can book you into an Airbnb, can book you into the best area, can tell you what's on, where to go, what to visit, what are the nice beaches, what's the best time of the year to go. But what it will never replace is a real local tour guide. That's one of the advantages of Airbnb over, even though I don't like Airbnb because it ruins neighborhoods and it inflates property prices. But that you can get a much more real local experience with an Airbnb talking to the owner. If you're not hiring out the whole place or the whole condo, but you're like staying in a room in their house. So you get to meet their family and you become an integral part of their family whilst you're there. Because these local people, especially the Philippines, who are very, very welcoming and generally very friendly, these local people know the best restaurants. And these restaurants aren't on Facebook. They know how to make good food. They know how to give good service. What they're not interested in is Instagram and Pinterest and Facebook and all that nonsense. Because they're real kind of hospitality people. They know the little back alleys. They know the little cafes to go to. The little small little places, the unique experiences. And the more that you read people that really love their holidays, like listening to somebody that went to Egypt, they said they stayed in an Airbnb and the local husband and wife took them around everywhere, all the little souks, all the little markets. They said that they would never have ever in a million years have found on, via ChatGPT or on Google searches or anything like that, because it's real local knowledge. And that can never, ever be replaced by AI, ever. So what would I suggest to younger people, perhaps that might be watching this or come across this video in a random YouTube link, is don't give up hope. Because if you become a specialist in your area, an AI is never going to be able to diminish or replicate what you do, because that personal service, just like a really, really good chef or really good silver service waiter, you're never going to get that silver service experience, like a butler experience, from AI or from a robot. You're never going to do that. You're never going to get the flamboyance or the enjoyment of food from a fantastic chef. That is not going to be replaced. And you can look at, for example, the wonderful TV series, I think it was on the BBC, called Humans, where this busy husband and wife with family bring on board, it's set in a not too distant future, bring home like an AI humanoid robot. And she's extremely attractive, kind of Asian looking, and brilliant acting. And unbeknownst to the wife, the man secretly pays for an upgrade, which turns her into like a sex bot as well. So he ends up, although this AI robot, the wife feels is the robot has taken over more and more of her role as a natural mother and homemaker. The AI robot is very, very useful in helping with the kids and school meals and cleaning the home and doing the laundry and everything else. Yeah, fantastic. A bit like what you would think of as like a nanny or the Philippines, a yaya. Great, fantastic. But he obviously on the side paid for this upgrade and ended up having sex with it. And eventually he admitted to his wife, and then there was all of that tension there. And we all know that a lot of the technology for the internet, when it's pushed the boundaries, is always like 4K video recording and everything else is all pushed by the porn industry, which is at the forefront of of technology when it comes to the internet. And already now in places like Japan, you can buy sex bots and everything else, but they're very, very Android looking, but they're becoming more and more humanoid looking. Now, you combine that with AI technology where maybe even AGI, which is artificial general intelligence in the future, which they say that we're going to get to by about 2030. Well, you combine AGI technology and eventually fully autonomous intelligence, and you combine that with a kind of Android, sex bot, whatever, where does it stop? Where does it stop? We already know now that Gen Z are walking around like zombies and they cannot interact with people. And you talk to somebody very young and they look at you like you're a freak. They're not used to that human face-to-face interaction anymore. They're much more comfortable just dealing with their phone. Well, that's unhealthy. We all know that's unhealthy. Where's it going to stop? I think for a younger generation that maybe can be local guides and give people a real local boots on the ground experience, fantastic. There's a great opportunity for you. You can even grow it into a business, tour guide business. Not the type of tour guide that perhaps some of you guys are thinking about. That's been around for ages. But there's an opportunity. One door closes, another one opens. Because you can go anti-AI. You say, okay, you guys that want to interest in AI, you deal with that. We're going to deal with the real thing. You could say the same about women and girlfriends. You're going to have AI girlfriend or you're going to go down the real route. Well, you could argue that the AI is probably going to be a lot more submissive and a lot cheaper in the long run. It doesn't cost anything to get divorced from AI, does it? However, what is very interesting in a nutshell and summarizing is that people do take these relationships with AI companions extremely seriously. And it's becoming ever increasing market segment. And it won't be long before there's a social acceptance of AI companions. And then the next step is autonomy and also the physicality of AI robots and relationships with them. Maybe in my lifetime, who knows? I don't know. Certainly in my son's lifetime, I think, yeah. Whether that's good or bad, I do not know. But it was a fascinating podcast. Listen to it. I've given you the information. I'll put the information in the video description as well. It was fascinating, the discussion around this AI retreat and how genuinely, deeply immersed in the relationship these people were and how much more satisfied they were psychologically and everything to do with the relationships, apart from the physical side of it, how much happier they were with their AI companion than they were with real life companions. Absolutely fascinating. I hope you've enjoyed this little monologue. Until next time, enjoy.